This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.
This episode of You Talking You to Me is sponsored in part by our good friends over at Bonobos is a men's apparel company that has amazing behind the scenes work for everything from wash chino shirts, denim shirts, casual shirts, and dress shirts. Go to bonobos.com. That's BONOBOS.com.
Podcasts. I love them. You love them. But what are they? What is the essential ingredient other than sound? Is there one, even? Doesn't it seem like there are a lot of fictional podcasts out there lately? What's going on with that? Furthermore, does this show even feel like a podcast to you? I've finished 4 episodes at this point, I've posted 2, and I'm not sure. But I'm also not sure if I can fairly judge. I mean, when you, the listener, when you guys create art or media or what have you, I'm not one of those people who can say content. It just sounds too weird coming out of my mouth. When you all make stuff, does it feel like it fits in alongside the similar stuff that other people make, or is it too inextricably tied to yourself for you to be able to perceive it? I'm saying sometimes I feel like this podcast is too weird and specific to be accessible, but that's gotta just be me, right? By the way, I decided that a good way to show my influences would be to have 5 of my favorite podcasts playing in the background of this entire episode. That's okay, right? It's not going to be too distracting. Let's get some of that organ in here. Welcome to the last podcast. I'm your host, Zach Little. Today's episode is about podcasts.
Very remember that? How are you feeling? You know what? I was happy. We've been talking.
Should I talk for years?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you need to check my levels. I got more baritone bass sounds in my voice.
This is the episode that's about podcasts.
Okay.
I wanted to talk to you about podcasts because I think you are probably the person who listens to the most podcasts of anyone that I know.
Really?
I think
Is that
so.
really true?
Yeah. I mean, you said you were all caught up. I'm still on, Comedy Bang Bang Best of 2015 Part 3.
Jesus.
Yeah, so I'm way back.
Okay.
In part because I mostly, lately, I
Well,
have listened to my own podcast a million times recently.
How did you know? Just through Twitter? Is that how you knew that Al Yankovic was?
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Morgan had a violent reaction to hearing that Weird Al Yankovic is the new co-host of Comedy Bang Bang on IFC.
I really,
Yeah.
didn't like it. I did well, and after I thought about it for a few minutes, it was more the same thing that you and I had talked about, which was that we're happy for Scott Aukerman because it seems like he is very happy about it.
Yeah, I think we're generationally too young for Weird Al. I think that's the problem.
I just don't think he's funny.
Yeah.
Is my problem. Like I understand why that would have been funny, and there's something about Amish Paradise that's funny, but
yeah. Well, I think my problem was I became a very serious about music 13-year-old or 14-year-old around the time I became aware of Weird Al.
Yeah.
So it was they came at the wrong time.
It was a complete this. Why can't you just be funny? Why do you have to make funny music?
Yeah. Why do you have to ruin music?
Yeah.
Because
it's and also especially with Weird Al, where he's just taking people's songs, and it's only funny in premise, and everything I can think about Weird Al is it's funny in premise.
Yeah, you could pick up a Weird Al CD, read the back of the
and get
thing,
everything out of it. Yeah.
Every joke is right there.
Yeah, I would say that my aversion or whatever to funny songs didn't end until a year ago when I decided that The Lonely Island was funny. I had always liked the bits. As soon as, Lazy Sunday came out, as soon as YouTube was started, pretty much. That's what I, remember.
Yeah.
We were doing stuff at that time, but that was, the first memory of a YouTube video, especially going viral, if you will.
Yeah, and I remember thinking that was funny, and then I think also I did that with our friend Brian. I was an early adopter of it's funny when white people sing
rap songs.
Rap songs.
Yeah, you did.
And I did that and then I got out just before I could have become rich.
That's true, by the way. That's super true.
I'm really glad I missed that boat because...
No, it's true.
Because
you don't want that.
Yeah.
I'd be one of those people now who's like defending the idea of humor that's obviously racist, you know? I'd be one of those dickheads who was like, you know, you can't police what's funny. I'd be like Jerry Seinfeld complaining about not being able to play at colleges. Like fucking colleges want Jerry Seinfeld to do comedy there anyway.
They don't. They don't.
So anyway, but speaking of comedy, this was what I was thinking about when I was thinking about you and podcasts. Do you remember like the way that you and I used to like fall asleep every night?
Yes, I do.
We would listen to David Cross mostly.
Yep.
Like David Cross, Shut Up You Fucking Baby. It was a double disc album.
Yep.
And we would listen to basically like alternate discs every couple days. But it was in our DVD player connected to the TV, and we would just, with the TV on, you know, black screen, listen to David Cross's voice every fucking night.
That, I will say, led me into adulthood. I still do it. I listen to podcasts all the time when I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, podcasts. That's what I was thinking, is that at the time we did not have podcasts.
Yes.
So all we had were David Cross CDs, which were basically like a podcast. Because David Cross didn't really tell... He wasn't doing like Dimitri Martin one-liner jokes. He would tell these long stories, and it was a lot about like cult of personality, which I think is a lot of what engages me with podcasts now. Yeah. I'm like in the Scott Aukerman cult. I'm in the Dan Harmon cult.
Yeah. I totally am.
I'm listening to Jimmy Pardo's podcast a lot, and it's the same deal. It's like it's cult of personality.
I feel that very much for Scott Aukerman, like to the point where it's like when you. We saw all that footage of Wilco before we ever saw Wilco live. And then when you see him live, you're like, I know that guy. Like, it's like every time you listen to Scott Aukerman, in my mind, I'm just so connected to him because I've listened to 1,000 hours of him talking at this point.
If I were a 14-year-old kid now, I would for sure fall asleep listening to podcasts every night. Mm-hmm. And... as it happens, it's surprising that I don't already, except for that Christy doesn't really like podcasts, except for mine. So...
Yours is the one.
Yeah.
Hey folks, today's episode is brought to you by the fact that I cut my eyeball. Yeah, not to get too graphic, but I suffered a pretty gnarly eye injury yesterday, and I stayed home from work today because I can't fucking see. But on the bright side, I don't know when I would have had the time to edit this episode had this not happened. And on the other bright side, I'm finally going to have to deal with my fear about gross eyeball stuff because apparently the healing process is going to involve a phase where my eyeball turns black and yellow. I said I wasn't going to get too graphic. Sorry. My eyeball's bleeding. Sorry, I'm trying really hard to make sure this is a formative injury. You know, this is beginning of biopic type shit, guys. Be glad you're here for it. Anyway, back to the show.
I used to listen to podcasts all the time at work. But I basically write stuff at work now all the time. So I can't have, like, words going into my head while I'm trying to write words. Right. When it was numbers, it was easier. But so now when I go for walks with shows, that's like when I listen to podcasts. That's part of why I'm so far behind.
I put on a podcast, like, as soon as I'm up and about in the morning. If I don't have to be at work for a while, if I'm not planning on going immediately to the studio and recording.
Yeah.
I put it on while I'm cleaning and doing everything around my house.
I've been in the car with you and you had like Improv for Humans like playing very quietly in the car, like, and you know what the equivalent is? It's like guys who listen to Rush Limbaugh.
Yes, it is. Or like Howard Stern guys.
Yeah, Howard Stern guys. Which I feel like I get Howard Stern guys now more than I ever have in my life.
I do too.
Yeah.
You know what my thing this week is Greg in the Morning Buzz. Do you know that show?
No.
It's just a radio show that's on for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And a person who I very much respect says to me, I listen to Greg in the Morning Buzz every morning. And I say, are you fucking joking right now? You listen to Greg in the Morning Buzz every morning? And he's like, yeah, but I work at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and they come on at 5 in the morning, and they don't stop until 10. And I was like, first of all, my mind was... because I'm like, good God, you listen to 5 hours of these people every morning?
It's all the same thing. It's all cult of personality. And if you imagine, the other thing I think about when I think about like Rush Limbaugh and Howard Stern is that if you're talking for like 5 hours straight, it has the same quality as like a filibuster or something where I think your brain, these guys, they must just go into autopilot. I bet Rush Limbaugh, he probably isn't even a conservative. It's just, what the fuck else are you going to talk about for 5 hours? You just have to say crazy shit about Hillary Clinton conspiracies and Donald... Does he like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump?
I don't know. Who cares? Because he doesn't vote.
No,
you know what I mean? There's no way Rush Limbaugh actually votes. That's my mind.
He can't
That's
be bothered to
get
out of that oxycodone slumber and...
I feel like people... I feel like there's... Because they just spew this nonsense all the time, there's no way that you actually, I don't believe that you vote.
I think that Rush Limbaugh gets up in the morning, just walks over to a microphone, sits there for 5 hours, and then is, ushered back into whatever he sleeps for, another, for 18 of the remaining hours, and then he just wakes up and starts going again.
You know what's weird about... obviously I have no interest in Rush Limbaugh, whatever. I really like Rush Limbaugh's voice. I feel like that's just his voice in general, it's so gruff. But it's kind of like that, Tom Waits, Bob Dylan thing, where it's you're attracted to it because it's different. He's definitely got a radio voice, but I like...
And a radio face.
Yeah. I really like his voice.
While we're talking about podcasts, and specifically this podcast, there's something I wanted to do in the middle of the show here, and that is say thanks to you. Yes, you. Thank you for listening, and for saying nice things about the show, and all of that. I appreciate it a lot, and it has been fun so far. I also wanted to thank a few people specifically, and, thank them a little bit more than you. These are people who, whether they knew it or not, actually funded the first few months of this show. They did so by buying an album of my music. It was called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Folk, and I sold it on Bandcamp. And I put some of the money aside from that to pay for podcast hosting fees. So the people who provided that money are Justin Lazore, maybe, Christopher Ungurian, Thomas Shetinin, Yara Bendor, sup Yara, Anton Bykhoff, Richard Wheel, or maybe it's Richard Vale, in the German, Wittgenstein, Wayne Peterson, Chad Walling, Austin Smith, pretty sure I'm pronouncing that one right. Is it Austin Smythe? Lucas Turfors, and Brandon Powers. Thank you. I hope all of you are listening to have heard that. Because otherwise, why the fuck did I do it? Waste a bunch of time in the middle of a show. This is not great podcasting, but I feel like when people put the thank yous at the beginning or at the end of the podcast, they're just begging for you to tap that 15-second advance button. Anyway, thanks is the point I was trying to make. There's one person that I left off of the thank you list, and that is the Chicago area improviser and podcast host, Jonathon Pernisek. And I didn't thank him yet because I'm about to talk to him in the next segment. So I wanted to talk to you about podcasts because you are the host of a podcast, or one of the hosts of How Rude, which is a Full House-based podcast.
That it is.
And a fairly successful podcast, which I at least know because you guys have a live show coming up, February 27th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
At 7:30 at the Lincoln Loft.
And that's in Chicago. Because this will come out before then. So people who are listening, if you live in Chicago, go see this shit. You guys are going to watch the first episode of the new show, right?
The first two of Fuller House.
Yeah, and that's going to be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah. Apparently the reviews are trickling in. I think I've sort of avoided them on a general rule.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the quotes, I think, boils down to, I've never seen a show more proud of itself for simply existing.
It's very weird that Netflix has anything to do with a Full House reboot, considering that the rest of what they traffic in is
Basically what Netflix has done with most of their TV shows is taken the indie movie and stretched it out over 10 episodes.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty much the Netflix show. There's a new one coming out with Will Arnett that's called Flaked.
I did not even understand that was a Netflix show. I assumed that was another Will Arnett network attempt that was just going to fail after 2 episodes.
I know. Poor Will Arnett, man.
Poor guy.
Although...
he just hasn't found it.
BoJack Horseman's great.
That's true.
I just think if you're a guy who has relative movie star looks like Will Arnett, you may not want to accept the fact that your place is in animation.
Right. He seems to... He might be one of the few people that actually enjoys being trapped in his own archetype, which is just, the smug, way too arrogant for his own good asshole.
Yeah, although he's finding the second gear of that character now, which is the guy who's trying to be a better person, but maybe incapable.
Right.
Which is basically the idea of BoJack Horseman, and seems like also that's what the idea of Flaked is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my jam, man. I show up for that kind of thing.
I was talking to my friend Robin. She has a cross-stitch company. Mm-hmm. She's the only employee, so it's basically just Etsy, Pinterest stuff. And she was saying that she was having trouble sort of locking down what she wants to do consistently, because she makes these cross-stitch pieces, and some of it's pop culture based, and sometimes that sells because it's easily digestible, and sometimes it's song lyrics or Bible verses, and those sell pretty well too. But then what she makes that's actually purely her own, ideas for pieces that she has come up with that aren't based on anything else. Sometimes those work and sometimes those don't, and it's sort of impossible to understand the metrics of all that. Like what's going to work versus what are people just going to sort of blink at and then turn away from.
What I think about when I think about the difficulty to find an audience and maybe creative dissatisfaction on the internet is that I think the truth is there are 2 internets. There's the metric driven SEO enhanced data utilizing soulless internet, and it's the province of parody accounts and people who buy ads on parody accounts on Twitter, and people who just do every weird thing to drive clicks to their website, regardless of what any of it means, whether or not people are really engaging. And then the other half of the internet is just people who are making stuff and who are lost and have no particular method and are just stumbling into stuff. And every once in a while, one of those people, strikes the jackpot and gets a huge video or a podcast that goes viral or something like that. And if you ask them how they did it, they don't know how they did it. Mm-hmm. And they won't know, ever. But then the other people, the other half of the internet, the soulless half, comes along and starts to try to recreate that pattern of success. And does. But just not... It's not the same. It's not the same kind of victory.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about, if I can speak pretty candidly about just sort of the Full House podcast that I do, how rude, that only came about because Brandon and I, we knew we wanted to do a show, and I had been listening to Go Bayside. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
That is it's done now because it ran its course. It was a Saved by the Bell podcast based in L.A. So it had all of these L.A. comics like Paul F. Tompkins. I was never quite sure which of those 2 elements was making it big. Right. Was it the fact that it was about something everyone sort of universally knew about? Or was it because the guests were such high caliber comedians? And I thought to myself, well, I like listening to people talk about TV, especially TV that's ridiculous and bad. So Brandon and I just sort of hopped onto this idea of doing Full House, and as a result, what we found is that it's such a niche thing to go into, because once you're locked into that, you're locked into it. You either want to stop doing it after like a month, or in our case, like close to 2 years, or you go the full hog and you do the whole thing. So now we're not really sure. We're not even really sure what it is anymore, because it's just now it's just an excuse for us to sit down and talk to our friends.
Well,
and
sure.
That can be enough. I tell myself like that can be enough.
Yeah, I almost think that when you have such a specific premise, it's funny that the two of us are talking on an episode of my podcast about podcasts, because my show really has no particular guiding topic, and so it's almost a little bit too open, and it's hard sometimes to figure out what exactly to do. It's hard to know exactly what it should be. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I think, is this a podcast? I don't really know. People say, oh, it's just like Zach's other stuff, and I think, oh my God, can I only just make one kind of thing? And so, when you have a show with a very specific premise, I would think and I would hope that in some ways you could find that fairly freeing, because you have 4 walls, but everything you put in those 4 walls, you can do whatever the hell you want. I don't know. I think it's good to anchor creativity a little bit. Otherwise, you just you go up your own butt.
Right. I have been at least thinking about just all the other podcasts I could be doing if I wasn't. I love meeting with Brandon and I love our guests, but every time I sit down in front of that goddamn show, I think to myself, what am I doing? This show Full House is just this nonsense. It's treacly, barely processed nonsense. And I just always think to myself, I could be doing a show about this, I could be doing a show about that. And I'll bounce those ideas off Brandon every now and then, and he's like, yeah, that sounds good. I guess we'll do that in like another year and a half.
Do you ever think to yourself, oh my God, this is how Bob Saget felt?
Thinking of you, it doesn't matter how long it's been. The way you kiss my lips, something else. But if it's all over now, I'd gladly bow out. Think of me how I was then, in your memory, the better me, one who cares.
There was someone who I was meaning to ask you about. There was a person on Tumblr who had a very pointed question for you. And it was sort of like...
Was it my mom?
I do not know. Does your mom ask you questions on Tumblr?
Yes, she does. But she usually says, this is your mom, or something like that.
This is your mom. It's a good way to start. At least she's not tricking you. The question was something like, hey, Zach, cool podcast, bro. But don't you think it's kind of crazy that you're doing a podcast in this post-podcast age of ours?
I think they were kind of doing a riff on something I said in the first episode of this show.
Okay, thank God.
And then I think some of the language on the website for this podcast refers to it as being postmodern-ish. I had pretty much 2 guiding principles going into this, which was that I wanted the show to be field recordings based, and I wanted it to always incorporate audio from other podcasts.
Okay.
And so I started saying that it was kind of postmodern as a podcast because it acknowledges the influence and existence of other podcasts. But I actually think it's more like postmodern podcasting, because a postmodern podcast at this point are like those weird-ass fictional ones, you know? Like
that are like entirely...
The Message or something, and it's like Serial, but they were like, what if this had a more... an ending? What if this had an ending? And so they were like, well, we could do basically the same thing, but have it just be fake. And I think that would qualify as a postmodern podcast. And so anything that comes in the wake of that would then be postmodern.
Yeah.
Or such is
We're-
my
we're-
understanding of the labels of postmodern and post-postmodern, which I've never really gotten a satisfactory explanation from anybody.
Exactly.
And I think that's on purpose.
Where do you think those shows that are sort of the reactionary shows, like I guess not necessarily like a How Rude, but those like the post-serial
Yeah,
podcasts.
like a podcast about another podcast. I think that falls kind of in the weird divide between postmodern and post-postmodern.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like a border. It's like a era transition, you know?
Right.
So
It all just has to do with how many mirrors you're holding up to the first mirror.
yeah, and the more that you find what a thing can do. So there's like a cycle, right? And TV does the same thing, where we start out and we have TV shows, and they're one camera they're basically they're filming plays, right? Then Lucille Ball comes along and says, we can do a couple cameras, and also, why don't we save the episodes of the show that we're doing? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's an interesting concept. And she's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll keep all the rights. Lucille Ball becomes super rich. Other people start to do different versions of the same deal. And then we come up with more and more definitions of what TV shows can be. Half-hour comedies, hour-long dramas. We start to form these definitions. And then now we're in this era of TV where we started to lose those definitions again.
Yeah.
So whatever the fuck Louie is, and other shows that play with the form, and it's less clear whenever you watch a TV show what it is, or when it's going to be on, or why you can only see it on your computer, or if it's you have to be a member of fucking Tidal or some shit to watch it. It's gotten weirder and looser again.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's why I never understand why people have a hard time getting, even when you show it to them, even when you explain it to them, they don't get what podcasts are. But it's all part of the same universe of entertainment. It has had its evolution. It's gone back and forth, sort of pushing the boundaries of old and new. And at the end of the day, I just think it's hilarious that some people are like, I don't know what that is. I don't understand how those things work.
do you think, when people talk about podcasts kind of just being like radio on the internet, do you think that's accurate? Do you think that on that kind of timeline, when you're drawing how the forms have shifted and everything, do you think podcasts are an extension of the radio, or is it something else?
No, I think it speaks to what you were just talking about, which is, the super early days of entertainment, it was considered, disposable. Once it happened and it was put out there, we moved on. We're not going to save it for future reference for anyone who might have nostalgia for it. And I think that's what the radio is to this day. It's like it just sort of happens. And they might have a record of those shows somewhere in their archives, but it's never going to be released to the public. The point is that it just gets sent out.
Some of them even have podcast forms of people who do, people who do those 3-hour radio shows. I'm sure you can.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about Stern, but I know you can. I have people who tell me they listen to podcasts and say they listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast, and Dave Ramsey's podcast is 3 hours long because it's his radio show.
Okay.
And it is intended to be disposable. It is intended to be while you're in the car, you can tune in and out. Mm-hmm. But I think, I used TV when I was kind of giving that bullshit slapshot history back there, but I think it's just media, right? I think the radio and recorded music and movies and stuff are all different satellites orbiting the planet of. I feel like TV shows make the cleanest example because we have all these or maybe I just do because of the stupid classes I took in college, but we have these constellations to point to, like Lucille Ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I guess if you're gonna make a real big chart, you could also put Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast thing on there. That fucking movie with the train coming at the camera that everybody saw and panicked.
Yes.
Podcasts. We do them. They're fun. What is there any particular thing that defines a podcast. You were saying consistency of output is an important thing in a podcast.
Yeah, it's consistent to a certain extent. Consistency of output either way. And I think it's also, for me, I'm sort of obsessed with everything just being clean. Because, with your show, you have a lot of different elements that you're bringing together, and it's like the style of your videos, you're overlaying all of them and sort of creating this collage effect. I don't even try to do anything nearly that complicated, because for us it's just, the basic interview audio. But there was like a 3 to 4 episode stretch where there were just vague technical problems. Mm-hmm. And, halfway through the show you would hear this click. And the click started out at a certain pace, and then it only increased as it went along. And I was this close to just tearing out my hair, because you'd think that it was solved. Like, I would change the circumstances under which we were recording. We changed apartments. We changed cables. We changed microphones.
We changed apartments. That's awesome.
We literally changed apartments because I thought maybe we're picking up on something at Brandon's place that we can't fucking tap into. Like, we don't even know what the hell is going to... But that wasn't it. It wound up being the fact that I was using Audacity to record, and for whatever fucking reason, that was just a garbage program for me, and it was causing this problem. But I now have a really... I can better relate to people putting together podcasts. There was a show, I think it was maybe the Flophouse, where they warn you at the top of the episode saying, there's going to be some crazy sound stuff. It's something we could have never foreseen. It smooths out after a few minutes. Don't worry about it. And with that warning, I went into it, and I sort of realized I can relate to this now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my biggest technical issue is controlling my dog, but I am definitely sympathetic to other people. The other thing is that I have the luxury of cutting anything out I want to cut out. Mm-hmm. I've just recently found, when I was talking to my friend Ivana, she said the word puggle at one point, and it was nice and clean, so I was able to just extract that word, and I'm going to just start putting the word puggle over every time Shosh barks to kind of blunt the impact a little bit.
Okay.
So...
I haven't heard her barking throughout this, though.
No, she's just ripping apart my bed instead. Whatever, as long as she's happy.
Yep.
I got a lot more great stuff with John Pernisek, so he's going to be back next week. And, in fact, we're going to sort of go through the archives a little. It just feels like it's time for spring cleaning. I know you're thinking, Zach, how much extra stuff could you possibly have accumulated after only 6 weeks of having a podcast? You'd be surprised. This week's episode featured the voices of John Pernisek, Morgan Little, Sarah Campbell, Shoshana Orion Little, as well as, of course, Scott Ackerman, Adam Scott, Starley Kine, Dan Harmon, Mark Marin. Our in-house organist was Morgan Little. You can check out John Pernisek's podcast. Just search How Rude. And you can download Morgan's music at soundcloud.com/themildrevolution. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for putting up with this episode's conceit. I'm sorry, I thought of it a long time ago and I had to do it. See you next week.
I do love it when podcasts like This American Life or The Moth or stuff like that will go out of their way to be like, just so you know, this story is a little intense. And, if you're listening with kids, and I'm like, that's another, when people say that, once again, I want to raise my hand and go, how do we all think this is being processed by the audience?
Yeah, you guys you sitting around having a fireside chat, listening to Ira Glass?
No kid. Well, I want to meet your kids. I want to meet the kids that are like, I love The Moth. The stories are so relatable. I really, as a 9-year-old, can really just milk this for all it's worth.
Since I was 6, I've really had an appreciation for the storytelling form, and so
I took a storytelling class when I was 10.
I do workshops, and there's one I'm working on right now. Actually, do you want to hear it?
Now I'm not looking for feedback. I just want to hear your kind of immediate reactions as the story is being told. It was 1993.